The sun had barely set on the chaos of the stolen vows. The chapel of Willow Creek still bore the marks of panic, overturned pews, crushed flowers, and a silence that felt heavier than grief. The two brides, Clara and Rose, sat together on the chapel steps, watching the horizon fade into red and gold. Clara's once bright eyes were dimmed with loss. The ring that had symbolized her love and promise now rested, somewhere in the dusty wilderness, stolen by the outlaw Silas Blackwood. The townsfolk murmured nearby, offering comfort and promises, but none of them had the courage or the skill to chase the thief into the open plains. That's when the sound of hoofbeats echoed from the west, steady, confident, unhurried. Every head turned toward the road. Out of the dust rode a lone figure, a man wearing a wide-brimmed hat, a long duster coat, and a weathered pair of boots that had seen more miles than most could count. His horse was black as midnight, muscles rippling beneath the saddle. The rider dismounted slowly, tying the reins to the chapel post. Whispers spread through the crowd. "It's him. Jake Matthews, the cowboy." Jake was known throughout the county, not just for his sharpshooting and steady hand, but for something rarer, a sense of justice that could not be bought or bent. Clara rose to her feet, brushing away her tears. "You're the one they talk about," she said softly. "The man who brings back what others have lost." Jake tipped his hat politely. "Ma'am, I do my best. Heard there's a thief making trouble in these parts." Rose stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "He took Clara's ring, and her piece along with it." Jake's blue eyes flicked toward the horizon, where the last trace of sunlight disappeared behind the hills. "Silas Blackwood," he said, his tone tightening. "I've crossed paths with that snake before. Never knew he'd stoop this low, robbing a bride in her own chapel." Without another word, Jake mounted his horse. "I'll bring it back," he said simply. "You have my word." Clara reached out, her voice cracking. "Please, be careful. He's dangerous." Jake's expression softened just slightly. "So am I," he replied, and with that he rode off into the night. The plains stretched before him, endless and silent under a rising moon. The only sounds were the steady rhythm of hooves and the whisper of the wind through the sagebrush. Jake followed the faint trail Silas had left. Hoofprints in the dust, a few broken twigs, and the faint shimmer of a dropped silver coin. Hours passed. Coyotes howled in the distance. Then, up ahead, the glow of a campfire flickered in the darkness. Jake slowed his horse, crouched low in the saddle, and crept closer. Silas sat by the fire, polishing the stolen ring between his fingers, grinning to himself. "Worth more than a year's trouble," he muttered. "That fancy girl'll never see this again." Jake's voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "You sure about that, Silas?" The outlaw froze, his grin vanishing. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "Matthews!" he hissed. "Didn't expect the law's shadow to follow me this far." "I ain't the law," Jake said, dismounting and stepping closer. "Just a man who don't like thieves ruining weddings." Silas laughed harshly. "You think you'll take me down alone?" "You've gone soft, cowboy." Jake's hand hovered near his holster. "You can hand over the ring or we settle this the hard way." The wind grew still. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. Then Silas drew his revolver but Jake was faster. A single gunshot cracked the night, echoing through the canyon. Silas's gun flew from his hand, landing in the dirt a few feet away. Jake approached slowly, his eyes cold as steel. "You're done, Silas. Give me the ring." Grimacing, Silas pulled the ring from his pocket and tossed it at Jake's boots. "Take it. It ain't worth dying over." Jake pocketed the ring, his gaze still fixed on the outlaw. "You're right, but you've hurt good people today, and that's something I can't let go." He tied Silas's hands with a rope from his saddle and mounted up again, dragging the outlaw's horse behind him. The long ride back to Willow Creek was quiet, broken only by the distant cry of an owl and Silas's muttered curses. By dawn, the town was stirring again. When Jake rode back into the main street, leading Silas in tow, people stopped what they were doing and stared in awe. The sight of justice returning to Willow Creek was one they wouldn't soon forget. Clara and Rose rushed from the chapel, their faces lighting up with disbelief and relief. Jake dismounted, holding out his hand. Resting in his palm was the shining silver ring, now speckled with a bit of desert dust, but still beautiful. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "You found it," she whispered. Jake nodded. "It belongs where it was meant to be." She took the ring gently, her fingers trembling. For a moment, she couldn't find words. Then she said softly, "You don't know what this means to me?" Jake smiled faintly. "I reckon I do." Behind them, the sheriff arrived to take Silas away. The outlaw scowled, but even he didn't dare speak. Justice had found him, as it always did. As the morning sun rose over the town once more, the chapel bells rang again. This time not for chaos, but for hope. The ceremony continued, smaller and quieter than before, but filled with something deeper, gratitude. Clara stood at the altar once more, her hand steady as she placed the ring back on her finger. Rose smiled through her tears. The two brides finally getting the peace they'd been denied. From outside the chapel, Jake watched silently. He didn't step inside or stay for thanks. Instead, he adjusted his hat, mounted his horse, and turned toward the open plains. "Where will you go now?" Lydia called after him. Jake glanced back with a hint of a smile. "Wherever justice rides next." And with that, he was gone, a lone figure disappearing into the horizon, leaving behind a town forever changed, and two brides whose stolen vows had been restored by the courage of a cowboy.